Guys, welcome back. I haven't spoke to you guys in a while. I'm hoping that the ecology unit has gone well so far online, and we're about ready to start the next unit. So this next unit will be on evolution, and we're going to focus today on Darwin's theory. We'll talk a little bit about Darwin, talk a little bit about evolution, and so today's just kind of an intro on evolution. Okay, so when we start to talk about beliefs, some people will say they believe in evolution, but it's not really a belief system. Remember, this is science, we're talking about theories. So it's not really, I believe in evolution, it's more that evolution itself is a theory. So let's talk about what that means. The theory of evolution, what are we even looking at? Evolution is the process by which modern organisms have descended from ancient organisms, most about common ancestry. A theory is a well-supported, testable explanation of phenomenon that have occurred in the natural world. And guys, when we say theory, it's not just like a few pieces of evidence. A theory is very supported with multiple pieces of evidence. They have to claim it multiple times. So it's not just like one piece of evidence that we're looking at here. It is thoroughly being explained through a lot of evidence. Multiple scientists have contributed to it. So theory is pretty backed up by a lot of evidence. Now, as we're getting into this, I know sometimes this could be hard. Religion is brought into evolution a lot and saying you can't believe in both. But again, religion is a belief system where evolution is based on theory. And so I'm also going to start this by saying if you are religious, I am not in no means saying that you have to disregard that. We will watch a few videos later in the week that will talk about religion evolution. And it's completely okay to have both. You can have your religious beliefs, but you can also support the theory of evolution. It doesn't have to be one versus the other. So I know some people can get very uncomfortable when we talk about this, but I just want you guys to look at it as a science, look at it as a theory, and feel comfortable with understanding what we see with evolution. But that, again, that doesn't mean you have to disregard your religion. I always like to say that first, because some people are very uncomfortable with this topic, but it's definitely okay to have both of them. Okay, so let's talk about Charles Darwin. He took a voyage on the Beagle, which was a ship. He was a naturalist. He sailed on the HMS Beagle in 1831, so that kind of times about when this was occurring. During his travels, Darwin made numerous observations and collected evidence that led him to propose evolution as the mechanism for the diversity of life on Earth. And guys, I can post the notes here if you guys just want to fill in as you go. It's up to you. You can take your own notes, but this will help you when we take the test later in the unit. So during his travels, what kind of observations? He took a lot of, not obviously with the camera, but he drew a lot of sketches. He collected fossils. He was collecting all these different things, feathers, all these different things to support his theory. And a little interesting fact about him on the Beagle, he wasn't getting paid during, I think I want to say it was about 5-year voyage. He didn't get paid through any of it. So how did he afford to travel? Well, he had to work on the ship. They allowed him to basically go on the ship for free as long as he contributed. This is everywhere where he went. Pretty cool trip. He went around Australia, Africa. He was from Europe, so that's kind of the red was where he started all of South America, Galapagos. So he got to see a lot of kind of different islands and tropical climates that he was looking at. Okay, so what did you notice? Patterns of diversity. So plants and animals were very suited to their environment. Many ways in which organisms survived and reproduced. And so, for example, he was looking at the biome grassland. The grassland of Argentina was also the same organisms that was a grassland in Australia. Same thing and Europe had different sorts of animals. So, like grasslands, depending on what area, all had similar types of animals. If it was a different biome, it had different types of animals. And they were very well suited for that specific environment. He also collected fossils throughout the voyage. Some of the fossils resemble organisms that were still alive today, so that made sense. But then he also collected some fossils that weren't like anything. And guys, you remember this is kind of like the first time that people are looking at fossils and doing this stuff. So could you imagine digging something up like this or some sort of dinosaur and they've never seen this stuff before? So like, what is this? I always think that'd be really cool to take a look at that because that'd just be crazy if you've never heard or seen something before and then all of a sudden this giant creature, fossil-like thing. Okay, what is going on here? So he was fortunate enough to get to kind of experience some of those first. He's mostly known, like if you look up Darwin, he's mostly known for his research in the Galapagos. It's located west of South America. And the islands, even though they're close together, they all have very different climates. So when he went from island to island, even though they're, right there, they all had different climates, so they had different species. He looked at tortoises, marine iguanas, and here's what he's really known for is Darwin's finches, among other organisms that had different traits. These traits often suited the organism for their specific environment. So he's known for his finches, and he would study these finches, even though they're all the species finches, depending on what island they're on, they had a different shaped beak. So one island where there was tons of nuts, the beaks seemed to have like they're suited to be able to crack open those nuts, so they're sharper. But others where they're just kind of eating softer items, or even like say like large seeds, and they have bigger beaks, or not as sharp beaks. It all depending on what their food source was there. Here's another one that we see. These were some of the islands that he visited, and like even though these are all tortoises, let's take a look. This one has a short neck, so most likely he was probably eating off the ground. Where this one, maybe there wasn't a lot of vegetation on the ground, he had to reach up higher into bushes. And this one's kind of in between. So again, it all has to do with their food source, and over time they've adapted to meet the needs of the food source that is available. And here's the real like, take a look at that. It's so crazy. It almost looks fake. But you can see there's not a lot of vegetation on the ground. They're having to go up to bushes, where here, short neck, there's tons of grass. So it really just depends on what food source is available. And over time, nature will select those traits that best fit the environment. There were a few scientists that he kind of got his ideas from. James Hutton was all about geological change. So he studied kind of how the earth has changed over time. Same things with Charles Lyell. He was more into geology and taking a look at rocks and how the earth has formed. George Cuvier is species extinction, and then Thomas Malthus was human struggle for existence. So he studied a lot of like human population and how we could reach carrying capacity and things like that. Okay, his biggest one was Lamarck, and mostly because Lamarck was wrong. You guys are all going to laugh at this theory, but remember, they don't have a lot of background. His theory is known as the use or disuse and inheritance of acquired traits. So definitely make sure you know this because this will be on the assessment that we take later. But use or disuse. So what he means is use or disuse. If you use something, then it's going to be more prominent. If you disuse, you're not going to need it. And then whatever you inherit in your lifetime can be passed on to your kids. So this is so crazy. So see, we have this mom crab here. Small hands, small hands. Okay. Well, over time, the mom needed to catch fish. It needed a larger pincher. So over time, her pincher grew. And because she had a large pincher, now she was able to pass it down to her kids. And remember, they don't know anything about DNA here. Watson and Crick haven't happened yet. But we know this is false because think of it this way too. Let's say I had gotten in a car accident and I lost my arm. If I have kids, like losing my arm didn't affect my DNA. So if I were to have kids, my kids wouldn't be born without an arm because I lost in a car accident. And that's kind of what he's saying. Like it'd be the same thing if she lost her arm from an attack from a predator, then her kids wouldn't have, or a pincher, I guess I should say. And that's kind of what he's showing here, which we know to be false, but this is what was believed, and they didn't know about DNA. So that's why Darwin kind of used his as a background, showing that traits are passed on, but it's more about the DNA, not necessarily what happens. So let's look at giraffes. So Lamarck would say we had a short neck ancestor giraffe. Over many years, it kept stretching and stretching until it could finally reach the top and it became long neck. And then So after many generations of slowly stretching, um, it was able to have offspring with long necks. Now, we know we can't change our DNA. You can't just stretch and get a longer neck. Now, Darwin, which his theory is right, he said there already was a variety. Some giraffes had long necks, medium, and short. Well, over time, what are going to be the ones that survive? The ones with the long necks are going to be the ones that survive because they can reach the food source. Short necks, they're not going to be able to reach anything and their population is going to die out. So nature selects the long necks. The long necks find other long necks. They reproduce until the whole generation is long necks. And that's what we're seeing here. He did write a book called The Origin of Species that had his theories. He didn't publish right away. Um, it's by means of natural selection. The reason why is because his parents were very well known. Religion was the only history in the 1800s back then. So if he were to publish this, not only was he going to go against his family, but he's going to go against all of history. And he knew it was going to cause, it could even cause him to lose his career because no one would take him seriously. It completely went against religion for his time, and it was a big deal to publish this. So natural selection occurs when there's overpopulation, struggle for existence, there's already variations, and some variations are favorable and help survival. We call these adaptations. So just like the giraffe, the one that was most likely to survive was the one with the long neck. Struggle for existence, if there's limited resources, it's all about survival of the fittest. One species is going to make it over the other based on their traits, and that's the traits that get passed down to the next generation. The organisms with the greatest number of favorable variations will survive and reproduce. And like I said, that's called survival of the fittest. That's really important. The traits that are best fit are going to survive, and that's how it works in nature. So over time, natural selection results in changes in the heritage characteristics of a population. These changes increase a species' fitness in the environment. So being the most fit doesn't mean the toughest or the strongest. It's whatever gene is best in the environment. So it could be the smallest. Maybe the smallest can fit in a burrow and hide from predators. So the one that will be selected over time is the smallest. So it's all fitness is about what trait is favorable. So in this case, the birds like green beetles. So the trait that's more favorable is the orangish color because the green are going to get eaten. So orange can reproduce and produce more until it could possibly even cause extinction in some species.